Hello and welcome to this week's Everyday Inclusion and Belonging, where we talk about literally everything that you can imagine under the sun when it comes to DEIAB, depending on, we focus on different letters.
Right.
Depending on the week. I am Mo Berkner-Boyd. I am the founder of the Moxie Exchange, home of Everyday Inclusion. I am a white woman with mid-length, kind of auburnish hair. Today, I'm rocking red frames, a blue shirt, and I've got a bookshelf with some of my favorite books, photos, and tchotchkes behind me. Especially during this Indigenous Heritage Month, I want to do an acknowledgement that I am sitting on Ute and Arapaho ancestral lands. And I've been doing just so much reflecting on what that means, what we've been taught historically. So the history versus truth. And I'm really excited next week on Monday, Everyday Inclusion and Belonging, we're going to be talking about land acknowledgements. And I know that I've got a lot to learn, and I can't wait to learn from Joe and Vanessa, who will be joining me, talking about how we can do those in a way that's meaningful and not performative. But this week, I am super excited. Tracy Akinade is joining me, and we're going to have a conversation about the evolution of what used to be D and is now EIAB. So Tracy, welcome, introduce yourselves, and let's dig into this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Mo. I cannot really explain to you. I woke up this morning saying today is going to be an amazing day. I am really honored that you asked me to have this conversation with you. And I really hope my goal today is that those that are watching walk away with something to impart in their work or a fresh perspective, or I would say just a glimmer of hope to keep the work going,
Yeah.
So thank you again for having me. But I just stated my name is Tracy Akinade. I am the Associate Director of Community Engagement and Economic Inclusion out of Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. And in my work, I really focus on bridging that gap between the community and the business school and utilizing the resources that we possess to really make the community that we live in and sit in better. Very passionate about entrepreneurism, very passionate about women and girls and education and people of color as a whole. Family is the foundation, and I'm really passionate about family in the home and then family in the workplace as well. And I think that's really where I think my passion for DEI really stems from, because I'm big on relationships. Mm-hmm. I'm big on that relationship currency. And not in the sense to spend, but more in the sense of how your life begins to thrive and feel so rich and even in terms wealthy when you have solid, meaningful relationships that build you up. We spend a lot of time at work. We also spend a lot of time at home, we hopefully, especially past the pandemic. So it's about, again, creating meaningful connections with the people that you love, the people that you work with, and even the people that you impact,
Yeah. And I got to see that, y'all, firsthand. The last time Tracy and I talked, I got to meet her wonderful niece.
My niece, Amara. That is my mini-me. That's my twin. Her dad is my older brother. And both my brother and sister-in-law joke all the time that she reminds them of me. And I can't determine or decipher if they're happy about that or if not.
Really depends on the day, right?
Yes, literally, it depends on the day. That's how I know.
Well, I love, I don't know if y'all can read, but Tracy's sweatshirt says ambitious. And let's talk about how that applies to the work that we do.
Right.
And this evolution, right? So DEI back in the day, it was about compliance. Right. Mm-hmm. It was, and now to the arc where we are on November 15th, 2022, and the evolution that's happened. So, let's talk about how DEI even just came to be, Tracy.
Right. If I'm honest with you, I didn't know DEI existed until George Floyd was murdered.
Mhm.
I had no language, no back knowledge, no recollection, or just, I think that horrific event really brought to light that this industry exists, that this work exists, that there is validity around this kind of work. Because I think you'll find with a lot of people in the DEI space, they'll tell you they were doing the work before they had the title.
Yeah,
And I
oh,
think,
right, had the language. I like how you said that too. Like, I didn't have the language for work that I was doing, and other people didn't have the language and the framework either, did they? And I love that you said, right, 2020 was when for so many people, the language, the framework got solidified.
exactly. Because like I said, I value relationships, and all I knew in my work was that what made me successful was how I poured into people, how I sought to develop people, because I managed people from a very young age, and really just caring about, honestly, the underdog and the parts of the organization that don't get a lot of shine, but really have a lot of knowledge to the bottom line of, or what impacts the bottom line. And so I recently graduated with my MBA from Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. And my last year in school, thank you. My last year in school was when the pandemic hit. And I was a highly engaged student, president of our Women in Business organization. And being in that position, I was asked to kind of create some learning spaces and listening sessions around what students wanted to see in terms of how our school responded to what was happening.
Mm.
And so that's when I really realized or learned that this type of work exists. And this type of work is classified as diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then our school really adopted the B in belonging, because the focus was really to create a space for a lot of people to belong. Our school is home to a lot of international cultures, and we're a world-renowned research institution. So there is just so much diversity in the work that we do, and the people that come to study and people that come to work for Hopkins. And so in that space, it kind of made sense, because I'll just give a short synopsis. When I graduated, I was on the pre-med track, because for many people who are children of immigrants like myself, you're either a doctor, an engineer, or a doctor. And so I was designated to be the doctor in our family, and I entered in a magnet school program for pre-med, got to college, realized it really wasn't for me. Broke my dad's heart in telling him that, and graduated with a degree in public relations and a minor in nonprofit management. I did a job for orientation, because my school took it very seriously, to where I was managing and orienting students of mass proportions onto the campus. And I realized I want to be in a lively setting. I want to be in a setting where the words I communicate inform, edify, and inspire people. And so I went on this path of really finding roles and opportunity that allowed me to do that. Post-graduation, I took the first job that was offered to me, also because I strive for excellence, and I didn't want to not show anything for being in school and all that time. And I managed call center teams for a major national retailer. And in that season, I managed people from all walks of life. I was a 22-year-old managing people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, people who had families, people who were trying to figure out their path in life. And I managed part-time people, I managed full-time associates, I managed a lot of different groups where there was a unique characteristic about them and how they fit into the bottom line of the organization. I also was really immersed in a lot of the cultural aspects of our organization. So our end of the month celebrations, things that drove culture across the floor, because I'm just going to keep it real with you. People who work in call centers and who are answering the phone tend to not really want to answer the phone. So I had to create a space where people wanted to come to work and people wanted to do the work that they were called to do and saw value in it. And that really took time for me to get to know my people on a deep level. What are their motivations? What are their aspirations? What makes them different? And weave that together to where they understand we are a team of such beautiful complexity, and it's all necessary. So when now fast forward to 2020, and I went back to school to get a master's in communications and an MBA, and this horrific tragedy strikes in the midst of a pandemic, it made sense. It made sense. All the roles where
What you've been doing. right?
All the roles where I managed people, where I had to make the case to management why we should spend our funds in this area to build momentum, to build morale, to build, I would say, the heart of why people do what they do at work and find purpose and meaning in their work at every level, no matter if you are on front line or if you are in management. And really, I would say, brokering perspectives of the organization to really come together and produce greatness. And then also caring about people's diverse backgrounds. When I got to graduate school, it was about, first of all, I'm from the South, from Texas. Shout out to Beyonce, Houston, Texas, made. And so coming from the South to the East Coast, that was a huge transition for me. I literally sold everything I had, packed up the remaining stuff in my truck, and me and my best friend road tripped and moved me halfway across the country. I had gift cards left because I used all my money saved up to pay off my car because I didn't really know how I was going to make it over on the East Coast getting this degree. And I come to Washington, D.C., the melting pot of this nation, where I am surrounded by so many people of color. I am surrounded by so many liberal perspectives, and I'm at a world-renowned institution pursuing my future. And it was a matter of meeting people of different religions, different focuses as to why they're getting their graduate degree. And then again, creating, whether it was events, whether it was ways for our degree program to kind of fill our needs and our goals, just hearing the perspective of the students and funneling that up. And so when I realized this was a path for me to take, like I said, it became so clear why I've had the roles that I've had, why I feel the way that I do, why I'm constantly in these positions where I'm being asked to drive culture, build engagement, and produce results as a result, as an outcome.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting is you kind of went through the arc of even sort of pre and post.
Right.
There was a lot that got codified in organizations starting in 2022. There were language systems. There were many organizations, the very first time there'd been investment, right? Where, there was budget, team, strategy, deliverables, right? It became in some organizations this understanding that it is a key driver of who we are and what we do. And then there were a lot of organizations that did a great job performative, like everyone got t-shirts.
or there was a public statement released to the media of where this company or organization stood, or how much money over X amount of years they were going to pledge, but maybe not a clear plan of how those funds would be dispersed. We saw a lot of different, I would say, performative tactics.
And I would say some of it wasn't, like, some was just flat out performative, right? And there's everything that they've done, right? That shine is already faded. There were a lot that were reactive that I would say it wasn't.
Great word.
Right. It wasn't well thought out. And I would say that then the reactive has turned into, okay, now what do we actually, okay, we're going to spin up a DEI committee to really understand this, or we're going to truly hire some people. And so I feel like there are a lot of organizations that it is, although their initial response was reactive, they have been putting things in place to make it systemic, right? And to make it evergreen.
Right.
And I think just like everything in this work, there's this spectrum. Because then you have organizations that have been doing the work for a long time, right? Like 20, 30 years, and even before that, without the language, the title, so what are some things that you have seen, even in just talking with different folks in the community, different folks that were in your MBA program that are now out and about working in different organizations? What have you seen as some of those things that have worked post-pandemic, now that we're through some of the chaos? The pandemic isn't over, right? But we're through some of the chaos, and the new way of work as well.
Right. New way of work. I'm at home. You're at home. I'm in a comfy sweatshirt, and it's about, I think, developing a strategy that works for said organization. What's super important is that when organizations are deciding to really put their best foot forward and really approach DEI from an earnest place, is that they examine what's required in their industry and what is unique to their organization. What I've seen, to answer your first question, what I've seen really work well, or I would say the mindset and perspective that at least gets you started in the right direction, is focusing on policy and focusing on changing the governing structure of organizations and the things that are in place to provide resources, to kind of equalize the playing field, to put effort in directions or in areas or communities that make sense. Think of a product-based large brand organization. You know, there are obviously internal departments, groups and teams that work to better this brand and I would say evolve the products that serve their target audiences. It's less now about only producing these products that are going to make money, and also about, okay, what about the livelihood of these people that are buying our products? What matters to them? Because when it comes to branding and marketing, especially, people don't necessarily always just buy your products. They're buying into a brand. They're buying into a lifestyle. They're buying into, and I would say in recent years, more of a positioning, a moral positioning of that company and organization. And so whether it's internal policy and procedure and structure, or external initiatives that still funnel and stem from the policies that are developed, that's what is really, really crucial and critical. That's what I believe gets people's behaviors and attitudes to change, to believe that I am either spending my money with an organization that really cares, or I, as an employee, am giving my time, effort to build the vision of this company that truly cares about the people that I care about, that cares about my well-being, that cares about the time that I put in this role and said role to again, further the vision and purpose of this organization. Policy is really where it really starts. I would say, going back to your point about reactionary, or I would say post-pandemic, the reactionary kind of approach to DEI, people started to really see, if you really want to, I think, impact people, you need to actually hire teams that are focused on this, because a lot of folks got DEI added onto their role and there wasn't a pay increase attached to it, or people at certain positions where, you know, ideally you would house DEI. Let me add that to that leadership role. And now you're not only the leader of said department, but you're also the champion for DEI for this organization until we figure out our footing and what we really believe in. And so the policy piece is critical.
Well, and it's interesting, Tracy, one of the things, Netta Jenkins and I are doing an Everyday Inclusion Live in January, where we're talking about people that have been put in role that are set up to fail, because they don't have, you know,
bandwidth, budget, vision,
or expertise. Right? This isn't, you wouldn't put somebody in role to lead your engineering team if they did not have core background in engineering. And we're doing that with DEI because, and that is like huge red flag, because we know then that organization really doesn't understand and see that there is expertise that comes into driving this strategy. So
absolutely, no, absolutely. And
so
I think, go ahead. I was just going to say, I think that it's not only important or imperative for organizations to place people in these positions that have the passion for the work, but have the knowledge and know-how. And at the bare minimum, I would say position them to further their education in that space. I didn't actually know that there were actually degree plans in diversity, equity, inclusion before the pandemic unraveled. There are actual master's degree programs in this space. There are people that were doing this for years and housed under HR, when really it should be its own separate department at the C-suite, upper management level. And that's really where it tends to fall, where when companies don't really know how to implement or really where to begin, they think of, okay, where where do we have the responsibility of people currently sitting? HR, okay, that's where it should go. Where now the relationship and the connection to, or I would say cross-functional connection department-wise definitely should be tied to HR, because a lot of, again, set policies and new governing practices to be implemented has to run through that body. But it doesn't mean that it lives there, or that those that are currently in that role need to now tack on additional responsibility in this other space.
Well, so let's talk about, we have a looming recession.
Mhm. Right.
And this is where it's going to get really interesting, isn't it? Those that may be like the first to go in any recession are things in the budget that are considered soft,
Right.
or extra, or right. So whether that's training and development, whether that is DEI, we have folks that are probably sitting in seats that are watching this, that are wondering what their organization is going to do, right? Whether DEI is going to be cut, whether their role is going to be cut. Any advice, any thinking in terms of recession proofing a DEI strategy?
Right. I think there are a couple things to keep in mind. First and foremost, it's really important to evaluate the work that you're doing and get the data behind why it must continue and how it still feeds into that bottom line results, whether in recession, whether recession non-existent. You got to have the facts and figures. You have to have the data around the work that you're doing. And that was, in most cases, or hopefully, really guided and provided for that said DEI professional or DEI team. If done well, the strategy for a DEI practitioner should have fed into a strategic vision across the company. And so when that vision is cascaded down, and when the outcomes are expressed for what that team or that individual should really accomplish, continuing to do the research around that work and why it's still critical.
And you know, what's interesting about all of that, like, I love your, like, show the numbers, right? Show the data, show the progress, show the impact. And the other piece of this is, right, economics do this. What has been very consistent over the last 10 years is how people are saying, you mentioned it earlier, right? I want to buy from a brand. I want to work for a brand that aligns. DEI matters to them.
Right.
And so I think it's going to be very interesting, because we will go back to probably pretty quickly where talent has all the power and the choice, which I'm always about. That's fantastic. And so bad behavior will be remembered.
Right. And I think with that, be willing to pivot. So you go back to the work that you're doing that was prescribed, or the vision that was casted, and again, get that foundation of why it still matters. And if there was a statement or commitment made by the organization, bring that back in too. Sometimes you have to remember or remind people so kindly what they committed to. And make it very clear how upholding those promises, upholding those commitments, upholding those statements is critical at a time of need. Then being willing to pivot, have the conversations with the decision makers and with the specific, I would say, heads of certain areas that can tell you where are we headed? What are we thinking? What are we considering? And that's why it's so important to have not only allies, but have advocates.
Oh, absolutely.
To give you that inside information on really what the organization at the top is thinking, because you need that knowledge to start, again, impacting your research. You got to lay the foundation with the data, but then you need to have some options of how to pivot to still show that, okay, we can still accomplish this in a different direction with a different focus, and it still accomplishes where we're headed or where we think we need to kind of strategize to make it through this trough. of the recession. So again, getting the foundation of facts and figures, being willing to pivot and have options of how said plan or work that's in place can be modified, can be adjusted, can kind of redirect course. And also, again, bringing in statements or commitments that were made to really reinforce we have to stand our ground and remain committed to our work and to our people, and really see where things fall. But I think having open communication, keeping your ear to the streets, so to speak, of what's going on is so important. And I think whether you're in DEI or not, having conversations with people and not just sitting back wondering, do I need to start looking elsewhere? Do I need to do this and that?
Right.
Take ownership of your work, take ownership of the part that you play, take ownership of whatever it is you committed to do in this role, and be present. Be willing to adjust. Be willing to pivot, be willing to stand your ground, be willing to hold people accountable, be willing to have tough conversations in the most productive, effective, and professional manner to see really what it is. If you ever, for whatever reason, have to leave an organization, you want to have that exit strategy set once you know you've done everything that you can possibly do. Yep. And that's the reality. Some folks may have to actually, some folks do have to plan what's next, but you have to look at your current situation as an opportunity to learn. And if you have to go somewhere, you would have wanted to maximize and optimize all avenues, all opportunities to really learn what's going on, to really implement what you see fitting and what's helpful and necessary. And then really, I would say, assess and diagnose the outcome.
I knew this was going to be a great conversation. Tracy, so we talked about the evolution, your own evolution in doing work, the evolution of the industry kind of forward. I love this being really proactive about what's coming next. And, don't stick your head in the sand, right? Be doing some things now. Leave me with one last truth bomb around this work.
Being in DEI is about being a trailblazer. It's about being a listener, and it's about being a front runner for growth, for culture, for relationship and change. In my current work, what I mentioned earlier, that my role is to really bridge that opportunity to connect deeper with the community that surrounds the Carey Business School, and that's Baltimore City. And I run a small business accelerator. And through that process, I've learned there are deeper ways to impact people. So I would say whoever your target audience is, whoever your particular community of focus is in your line of DEI work, spend more time getting to know them and what their needs are, because you also have to remember, keep the impact fresh. Keep the way that you are impacting people, that you are diving into this work fresh. We're now post-pandemic, potentially heading into a recession. What are the needs now? The needs before were about surviving, What are the needs now about potentially heading into a space, again, where people don't really know what to expect, but there's at least more on the table than there were 2 years ago. So I would say, keep in mind that your role as a DEI practitioner is to really broker perspectives, to be a trailblazer, but to be a listener and be really willing to pivot and learn your people now in this new season. People change, people grow, their needs shift. What are the needs of your people, and how can that impact your bottom line?
That was a truth bomb. Love it. Tracy, thank you. Thank you for sharing your work.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. And if there are any entrepreneurs or DEI professionals, I definitely really hope that you connect with me on LinkedIn. We're opening up applications for our community consulting lab, and it is a free program to help entrepreneurs scale or refine their business model and gain access to capital. So, yes.
So I have to say, shout out to Urban Reads Bookstore, who is in Baltimore. Check them out, y'all. She is a woman doing amazing things, both for the community and for those that are incarcerated. So Tracy, if you're not with her, I will get you connected with Tia.
Please do. I would love her in my program if it would be helpful.
Yep. Thanks, y'all. Keep doing the work. Do the next right thing. We'll see you next week where we talk about meaningful land acknowledgements. Tracy, thanks again.